Okay, I'm going to show you how to do this little pear, little trivet with a pear on it. It's going to be fired. We're going to use this vanilla spice. It's a matte glaze. So with the matte glazes, you have to apply 4 coats with matte glazes. So you're going to pour 4 coats. I may need a little more than that. Okay, the matte glazes, you don't have to go in all the same direction. But I just follow the tile, so I do go in one direction, but it doesn't really matter. You could go all this way and then go all this way on this, across on the second coat. I just keep it the same. Now, because it's going to be a trivet that I can use on the stove or like a hot plate, because I'm going to use it like a hot plate, then I would do the sides. You can see that the coat's going to dry very quickly. So you can put your second coat on pretty fast. You want to use like maybe a mop brush, or you're going to use something big. Don't use a square brush. Don't use a brush like this, because this is more rounded. It's going to hold more paint, and it's going to hold the glaze really nice. This here is just going to, if you use one of these square brushes, it's very hard on the edges, like a harsh edge. So you're going to end up, pulling off the paint and not get your 4 coats. You also don't want to glob it on. Put it on nice and smooth, because you can. So then once you get your second coat on, you may want to let it dry for a few minutes till it, as you can see, it's already starting to dry. So these glazes dry very, very quick. The last coat takes a little bit longer to dry than the rest. Okay, so you're going to let that dry and then do 2 more coats, and then I'll show you what the next thing is. Once your plate is dry, your tile is dry, you want to put it aside. You want to trace your pattern. Use a knife, a X-Acto knife, to cut around your pattern, because you don't want to, you need the inside. You're going to be using this part of the stencil, okay? Now, what you're going to do is, once you get that cut out, you can cut through it to cut it out if you don't have a X-Acto knife. But if you do that, then you'll have to tape up that piece, because you want this stencil here. And I'm going to cut this out closer to it so I don't have all this excess around it. Now I'm going to take this, and I'm going to take a soft fan brush. I'm going to put it in the water. I'm going to wet the tile down a little bit. The vanilla spice, right on top of the vanilla spice. It's dry. Once it's dry, you can do this. Then I'm going to put this down, just like this. If you have never done the paper technique before, this is just to make sure that it sticks to the glaze. So as long as you got a glaze there, water will stick it like glue. Just make sure your edges are, nice and tight right around here. You only have to let it dry for a couple of minutes, just till it dries to the touch. Okay, so that's done. Now you want to get out some colors, and you want what a yolk. You just need a little bit. What a yolk. You want some lime Ricky, and a little tiny bit of green acres. I'm going to use a little bit of pumpkin pie. Now, this is what I'm going to do. I've got a very small sponge here. I cut it so that it's just got a little bit of a rounded edge right here. I try to cut up little small sponges for this type of thing. Actually, this one's even smaller. It's a little bit better. So I have this small sponge, which I'm going to use this rounded edge of the sponge, and I'm going to kind of make a little ball out of it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dab it into the water yolk, the yellow, and I'm going to do my pear. I'm going to cover the whole pear with the yellow. And I'm just sponging a coat on there. Now I got one coat on there, but I want to put a second coat. So I'm going to let it dry a tiny bit. And then I'm going to put a second coat on. Now, my second coat, I'm going to do another second coat. I'm doing this kind of quickly. You can let it dry a little bit longer because it'll stay there, the first coat, because then it will dry. Once it's dry, the second coat will go on a little heavier. Now I'm going to put a little dab of this green, the Lime Ricky green. Now, dab it off on a paper towel or something. You don't want it on real heavy. Now, what I want to do with this is add a little bit of that green to the pear. I don't know if you can see this. It's pretty light, but I just want to add a little bit of green. And maybe not even on the whole thing, just kind of scattered. You can see how I did that. So there's a little bit of green there with the yellow. Now, I'm gonna take, actually, I'm not even going to rinse it. So I'm going to dab it off a little bit on the paper towel. Then I'm going to dab a little bit of this burnt orange color. Make sure you dab it off on a towel first, though, because you don't want it really strong, okay? And now I'm going to take a little bit of that orange, and I'm going to put some of that in there also. Because a pear isn't just one color. Now, when this gets fired, all the vanilla spice has specks in it, and the specks are going to come through. When you see the picture of it fired, you'll see that. I'm going to put a little bit more, a little heavier down here. Okay, so now I got this. So you will see that the pear has a few different colors in it. Now I'm going to take my my paper off, and now I got a nice perfect pear. See, that's what gives you that nice perfect pear. You could do it another way, but the sponge look looks good on a pear like this because you can get all those little colors in it. Okay, now we're going to do the leaves. So what I'm going to do for the leaves is I'm going to take a square brush. No, I'm going to actually take this round brush. It's like maybe a number 6 round or an 8, maybe a number 8 round. Let's see if I have a bigger one. Okay, so take the number 8 round brush. Now I'm going to dip it into the green. This is the Lime Ricky. Now I'm going to dab a very little bit of this dark green onto the side of it. If you can see what I'm doing here, I'm just getting a little bit on the side of the brush. Okay, I might even put a tiny bit on this side of the brush, okay? So now I'm going to take this brush and I'm going to make a leaf, and I'm going to do this. This is how I'm doing this. And then I'm going to twist it and turn it into like a point, okay? If you don't like it, go over it again and do it again, but just bring it to a point. So you're really just pressing down. This is what you're doing. Let me show you what you're doing. So I'm going to do this again. So you're going to load your brush with the Lime Ricky, dab a little bit on each side of the brush with I think it's the Green Acres. And then you're going to put your brush down flat. You see how I got it down flat? And then I'm going to twist it so I can put some little waves in it. Then I'm going to turn the brush with my fingers and lift at the same time so it comes to a point. So that's how I'm going to make my point You can go either way, twist it either way, this way. But as you're twisting, you want to twist and pull up. And that's how you make the leaf. So, there's my leaf. Now I'm going to take a little bit of the dark. This is Happy Trails. I'm going to take a tiny bit of Happy Trails, and I'm just going to use any kind of a detail brush or liner brush. And now I'm going to just make a little stem that goes right to the pear. And as you can see, when I get to the pear, I'm going to do this because I want to bring it right in so it looks like it's attached to the pear. So I'm bringing it in close, and then I'm kind of putting a little line under it so that this line here, so that it looks like a pear. Now, the next step is just a little bit harder because what you're going to do is you're going to take another brush. You can use a number 6, 8, whatever is comfortable for you. This is just a number 4, actually, this one here. So now I'm going to take this. I'm going to put it in the water. I'm going to wet. I'm going to dab it off because now I want a little bit of shadow on this pear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, I'm going to use the darker color, this Happy Trails. So you wet, you dab, and you side load this side of the brush. And now I'm going to actually do this side of the pear. So I'm going to do on the outside of the pear. You can see as I'm doing this. See, so I'm just wetting the brush. So the only thing the brush has in it is water, and then it has the dark color right aside of the on the side edge, like the edge of the brush. Let me see if you can see that here. So it's wet, dab, slide the brush on the side here, just to load the side of the brush. And then you're just going to go up the side edge of this pear. Now you might have to load it a couple of times and do it a couple of times, but just to give it an edge, a shadow on the outside of the pear on this side. Now I'm going to do the bottom area also. So I'm going to wet, dab, slide it across the color. And when you're shadowing, just make your brush go flat almost so that it just gives it that shadow. It's just shading. Now, if you want to get some off because you feel like you put too much, just wet it and just use water to wipe it a little bit. Just use water and just brush off the edge if you want a little less shading or it gets too much over here. Now, I want the whole pear to be outlined. So, but on this side of the pear, I'm going to make a little line on the inside instead of the outside. So now I'm going to go on the inside of the pear to do that same shading, but only the inside of the pear. Now, if you want to make it a little bit heavier, that's when you do take the bigger brush. You know, then you can take a like a number 8 brush instead of a number 4. Is it number 6 or 8? Let's see. This one's a 6. Okay, now this is a little bigger. So now when I wet and dab it, and I slide it into the paint, and then I flatten it, I'm going to have a little more brown. So it's going to be, my shadow is going to be a little bit thicker. As you can see. So now my shadow on this side is a little bit thicker. So now I got brown on the inside shadow. So this side, it's on the outside. I'm actually going to put a little more on the outside. And this looks really good on the vanilla spice when you do this type of shading or anything. So now I'm going to put a little bit more shadow down here. Now, you can see how the shadow looks, okay? It's still a little wet, but this here isn't really shadow. That's mostly just water, and it's just darker because it's wet. So that's my pear. Now, I still need to connect this over here, so the leaf. So now, I'm going to go back into the dark color, the Happy Trails, with the little liner brush. And now, I'm going to put a little line going, you can see, going to the leaf, because of course we have to have that. It's not hanging there in the air. And when I do that, I'm going to go right down to the edge. I'm going to just wave it a little and go right down to the edge of the leaf so it has a little bit of a vein going in the middle of it. And that's about it for the leaf. Now, if you want, this is kind of a plain trivet, you know, it's kind of plain with the only thing I have on here is pear. So if you want, you can take a stamp and maybe stamp the edge with something, which anything you do on top of this vanilla spice just gets fired. This will just get fired. It'll have specks in it, and you won't have to clear glaze it, because you already got 4 coats of the vanilla spice matte glaze, and the matte comes out very smooth looking. And I'll show it to you. You'll see a picture of it after I fire it tonight. You're going to see a picture of it fired and what it looks like. So now I'm going to show you how to add this. I just found this little leaf stamp, so I'm going to add this around the edge. Also, if you don't want to do this little leaf with like a brush stroke, and you know, you feel like that's difficult and you don't want to do that, then you could just use a little stamp and put stamp on a leaf. Okay, but that's probably what you could do. And then this here, you can go around with a stamp. So I'm going to make this stamp around the whole thing. By doing this, I'm going to use the pumpkin pie, and I'm going to put some color on it, and I'm going to stamp around it. Now, because I just want some kind of border or something. It's too plain. So that's what I'm going to do. You can see this, the way this is going. So you just put a little bit, because I don't want it too dark. I didn't measure anything out, so I don't know if it's going to go all the way around just right. Usually I figure it out to make sure, but I didn't, so we'll see what happens. I think it's going to work out. So you're going to get like sort of 3 across and then go the other way, so. Now I'm only going to get 2 this way. Okay, so there's my pear. That's finished. I'm just going to put it in the kiln, and as you're going to see, the little flecks in the vanilla spice are going to show up, and they're going to come through the pear a little bit too, so it'll look really nice. So that's about it. It's a real simple project to make a nice little hot plate.